Mr. Speaker, proudly I stand here today, proudly to say, and still I rise. And still I rise. A proud, liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, and still unafraid. And still I rise, Mr. Speaker, not only as a proud, liberated Democrat, but also, Mr. Speaker, censured, not silenced. Censured, but not silenced. Still carrying my cane, which has been called many things. But for me, it provides comfort. It provides comfort because I'm a believer in the 23rd Psalm, that part about, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. This is my comfort. Mr. Speaker, there are people who don't believe that I should have the free speech that the Constitution affords me. And I'm not always in the company of people who can protect me. So my cane has become my staff and my rod that comforts me, Mr. Speaker. I wish it were different, but it's not. We seem to live in a society now where if you are willing to speak truth to power, there are consequences beyond simply having those who differ with you give their retorts. There are some who want to do more than give retorts. So we have to find ways to comfort ourselves when we no longer have those who are assigned the responsibility of providing us comfort. Protection is another way of saying comfort. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today because I want to expose what has been called to our attention in many different ways over the last many hours. Mr. Speaker, we are at this moment in our country engaging in a big lie cover-up. It is a part of a Chatgate, a big lie cover-up. Chatgate, Mr. Speaker, is a security breach, not defined as such, because the person who would define it as such, if he should do so, would inculpate himself. So the Secretary of Defense, who has the responsibility of defining whether certain information is classified or not, chooses not to define that which is intuitively obvious as classified. He chooses not to define it as classified. He does not want to inculpate himself. So he has the ability to exculpate himself by simply saying something that clearly is classified, saying that it is not. Mr. Speaker, while he can say so, I think the American public will have the final word and will be the final judge. I'm honored to tell you who the players are in this cover-up. One person is, quite frankly, a person who merits a lot of accolades, a person who ought to be acknowledged for the courage that he has demonstrated, a person who brought this to the attention of the public, a person who had no desire to be a part of this cover-up, but he is only there in that he was the person who, in a sense, acts as a whistleblower. And I'm talking about Mr. Goldberg with the Atlantic magazine. Mr. Goldberg is the person who had messages sent to him that he did not seek, that he did not ask for, according to the reports that I have read and you have probably seen and heard televised. He was there minding his own business, when he received messages that were intended for a select group of people, many of whom I will name in just a moment. And in receiving these messages, he was made privy to information that should not have been exposed to the public, in the opinion of many experts, should not have been exposed to the public. I will read some of the information that was captured by Mr. Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg captured this, and this comes from the Atlantic magazine. They published this information. It has been made public. My belief is that the persons who engaged in this cover-up had no desire to have this published, but once it was, there was a decision made by the person who had the power to do so to say, well, it's simply not classified information. So, no big deal. Well, here's the big deal. This information, according to Mr. Goldberg, he indicates that at 11:44 a.m. Eastern Time, he gives the name of the person. It's the Secretary of Defense, Hetzek, posted in the chat in all caps, and this is the quote, "Team update." Then Mr. Goldberg indicates the text beneath this began, time now 11:44 ET. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with, it says W, with CENTCOM, we are a go for mission launch. We are a go for mission launch. Well, let's go on. These are excerpts. I shall not read it all. Next comment in quotes reads, 12:15 ET, F-18s launched first strike package. And thereafter, 14:10, more F-18s launch, second strike package. Thereafter, 15:36, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. Now, all of this was intended for a select group of people. It was not intended that this be published, but since it has been published, the Secretary of Defense has indicated that this was not classified information. Now, if the Secretary of Defense, who was a participant in this chat, in what I'm calling Chatgate, if the Secretary of Defense sincerely believes that this is not classified information, and there's more of it, I've only read you some excerpts. If he sincerely believes this, then he is not the person who should be charged with the responsibility of making a decision as to whether this type of information is classified. Because there is no way a person who has intelligence at heart and an understanding of it within the mind to conclude that this is not classified information. Too many experts differ with him. We had persons who are on the Intelligence Committee in the House to indicate that this was clearly classified information. In fact, indicated that things that are less serious in nature have been classified. But the Secretary of Defense has the ability to exculpate himself. So his exculpatory statement is that this is not classified information. I believe that if any other person beneath the Secretary of State had allowed such information, same information, to be exposed to the public, I don't think the Secretary of State would have come to the same conclusion. The Secretary of State has sacrificed his honor and his dignity by indicating that this is not classified information. But he didn't do it without the aid and comfort of some others. Let's just talk about the other people who were on this call this chat with the Secretary of State. We had the Vice President of the United States of America a part of the chat. Now, I don't believe that the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President of the United States would get on a chat and have this type of information that I've called to your attention, much more available, get on a chat and have this be exposed to the public. There was no desire that it be exposed to the public. They said it's sensitive information. Well, it is sensitive because it's classified information that has not been declared such because it would inculpate the Defense Secretary. So you have the Vice President of the United States on the chat. Then you have the CIA Director, Vice President of the United States, Secretary of Defense, CIA Director. And this is not classified information that they're discussing, just having a little talk that could be exposed to the public, but chose not to, but for it having been sent to Mr. Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg, by the way, deserves a Congressional Medal of Honor. He is the hero in this story. He is the person who has had the courage and also the wisdom and insight to understand that before you release this, you need to do some checking. So he did his due diligence before releasing the information. But Mr. Goldberg, the person who released it, has been called many names by people who would not have him release the information. Mr. Goldberg has been scorned. He is the person who called to our attention something that was done improperly, and yet he's being made the villain. He's not the villain. He is the hero in this process, and he ought to be acknowledged as such. I am going to have a flag flown over the Capitol of the United States of America in honor of Mr. Goldberg for what he has done. I will not allow his reputation to be tarnished without a fight to protect it. I'm going to do what I can to protect his reputation. So we have the Director of National Intelligence on the call, on the chat. Director of National Intelligence. The Secretary of State on the chat. Again, the Defense Secretary, the Vice President, the CIA Director, the Director of National Intelligence. My God. Also, Special Envoy Witkoff was on there. And by the way, he was in Russia at the time he was on. We all know that you should not be on an unsecured line if you're going to be in Russia talking. Those of us who've been to Russia are very much aware. And, of course, the Secretary of State. These are the players, all of them on a chat, and all of them engaged in the cover-up of this big lie. A cover-up. A cover-up because they all have at one time or another implied or stated explicitly that this was not classified. That this was not classified. And they had the cover of the Secretary of Defense to give them this opportunity to contend that it wasn't classified because he had to protect himself. And to protect himself, he declassified what should have been classified. He avoided being inculpated by declassifying this information that should have been classified. Now, this is egregious. It is always said that the cover-up is more egregious than the action that precipitates the cover-up. True, the cover-up is more egregious than the action that precipitates the cover-up. But there's something that occurred here that's more egregious than the action that precipitated the cover-up, than the cover-up itself, and that thing is the ability of all of these actors to do this and commit any federal crime with impunity. and as a matter of fact, we could say with immunity. These actors, these participants, they all have the blessings of the President of the United States of America. And the President of the United States of America, now under the impression that he has absolute immunity, knowing that he's not likely to be prosecuted for anything other than impeachment while he is holding the office of the presidency, knowing this, believing he has absolute immunity, and having already demonstrated that he will accord exoneration by way of pardon to people who would assault the citadel of democracy, the capital of the United States of America, assault it, and he, the President of the United States, used his awesome pardon power, the awesome power accorded him in good faith under the Constitution of the United States of America. He uses it to release and to a certain extent to exonerate, limited extent, persons who actually assaulted the Capitol. So they now, these participants in this event, they know that they've got the president backing them up. They know that even if they commit a federal crime, all the president has to do is pardon them. It's really that simple. So you've got a president now who sits on high, understanding that all beneath him, all of his minions, all of his plutocrats and others who are beneath him, he has the ability to protect them from breaches of the federal law. This is more egregious than the action that precipitated the cover-up and the cover-up itself. To know that we now have an administration where all of the parties involved can rely on one person to protect them regardless as to what they do if it is a federal offense. Yes, there was a cover-up. Yes, that cover-up is something that they understood they could get away with even if they were caught red-handed. They knew they could get away with it because they knew that the president was there to back them. By the way, the president is also there to do what he normally does, and that is throw his acolytes, his underlings, his persons who are beneath him, if you will, throw them under the bus. And he did. Threw them under the bus. He doesn't know anything about this. He just happens to have heard about it. Now, the president gets briefings on all important issues. But for him to sit and say, I know nothing about it, which is what he always does. And then he pushes someone else under the bus. But he knows that he can push them under the bus and then extricate them because he has the magic wand, the power to pardon. And he will use it, as has been demonstrated by his causing many persons who assaulted the Capitol, persons who came here with a gallows, persons who came using flags and trying to stab and all sorts of sprays, persons who came into the Capitol and defecated. He caused all of these persons to be released. If not all, I would say to you, nearly all. I don't have the exact numbers, but he went on a rampage and just started pardoning people who were engaged in this assault on the citadel of democracy. So we have ourselves now a circumstance where people who are trusted with the nation's most sacred secrets, sacred, they're so important that they're really sacred. Sacred secrets. These persons have demonstrated that they will forfeit their dignity, their self-respect, and their honor. They will forfeit these things, to protect themselves and to protect the president. Themselves and the president. And what we have when this occurs, with all of these people doing this, we have now a group of people who have sacrifice their honor. When you sacrifice your honor in this fashion, the people who serve under you lose respect for you. They lose respect for you. There are men and women, persons in our military who no longer respect the persons who serve in these high and lofty positions. They don't respect them because they are persons with a reasonable amount of intellect, superior intellect, and understand that this whole scenario, this fiasco, this level of buffoonery, they understand that this is not based on truth. To say that this was not certified, this was not classified information. It wasn't certified as such, but it was classified. Only reason not certified as such because the Secretary of Defense would inculpate himself if he should do so. He would put himself in harm's way. So he chose to keep himself out of harm's way. His cohorts agree with him. They all now are going to contend that nothing to see here, just a chat between persons who happen to want to discuss sensitive information, and the reporter who reports it, he's the culprit in all of this. The people who serve in our military, they know better. And they know now that the people at the top are not honorable people. That has an impact on morale. And don't you think for 1 second that someone in the military will not at some point in time use the same argument that you're using. They're going to mention how this very incident occurred and how people just walked away from it unscathed. That's what they will do. People are not going to allow this to just be a one-off. If something happens and they should be charged and they believe that this scenario can aid and comfort them with their defense, they will use it. So we now have, at the highest levels of our government, people who have given up their dignity, their self-respect, and they no longer have the honor and respect of a good many people that have to serve under them. Mr. Speaker, this is a very sad time in the history of our country. Very sad. And here's the final reason why it's sad. I was silenced, in a sense, when I was shouted down by my colleagues. They shouted me down when I was trying to explain to the president. I never called him a name. I merely said to him, you do not have a mandate. You do not have a mandate to cut Medicaid. My colleagues were shouting loudly to prevent my voice from being heard. At least that's the way I received it. So I repeated what I said. Their voices grew louder. I repeated again, and I was removed. I'm not mad at the speaker. I'm not angry with them. I'm not angry with anyone. I was censured for what I did. Censured, not silenced. My voice will not be silenced. Censured, but not silenced. Here is the point. What I did, this Congress decided, not all, let me not say include everyone, but all of my colleagues across the aisle and 10 colleagues from this side of the aisle, they decided that I should be censured. I hold no animus toward any of them. I want to make a point. The President of the United States and his men and women are now going to perpetrate this cover-up and walk away unscathed, except for loss of dignity, self-respect, and honor. Mr. Speaker, I would rather be censured than lose my dignity, sacrifice it, my self-respect. I admitted that I did what I did intentionally. They won't admit that they were in this chat and that it should have been in a much more secured location. They won't admit it. They don't have the self-respect and the dignity to just tell the truth about what happened. I admit it. that I did it intentionally. I said, when you do things and you do them with intent, and if it's a form of protest in my case, then you've got to be prepared to suffer the consequences. So I have been prepared to suffer the consequences. Doesn't mean that I agree. You don't have to agree with the consequences you suffer, but you have to be prepared. They chose not to be prepared, chose not to suffer any consequences by covering up with a big lie. I respect Mr. Castro. I saw him when he questioned those persons who were before him on yesterday. And when he questioned them about this, he called each name, dear brother Castro, dear Congressman, I have such great respect for you. You had the courage to tell them to their faces that they were lying. It takes courage to do what he did. Courage is what's missing. You got to have courage if you want to make big change. You got to be willing to stand and say, as he did. This is not to say that others did not deliver great commentary. I single him out because of the way he did what he did and in the presence of the people. He didn't wait until he was out behind their backs to say what he said. He said it in front of their faces. And in my neck of the woods, when you tell a person something to his face or her face or their face, that says something about you as a person. This is why I wanted to tell the president to his face, you don't have the mandate to cut Medicaid and Medicare, by the way, as well, and Social Security. He doesn't. So all of this, this censure of a person for speaking out against the president, who, by the way, on that same evening called Democrats lunatics, no censure of the president, no reprimand, nothing said from the House, just the president being himself. Others, on the other hand, can be censured for calling things to the president's attention. I'm also the only person to ever been removed, evicted from a joint session of Congress. The only one. I'm only saying this because I don't want anyone to believe that this censure and this eviction is the end of the story. It's just not. And I'm grateful to all of those who have been kind to me and the well wishes I've received and all of the persons who have indicated that they would have me speak at various events. I'm grateful to you. But I want you to know that the story does not end with a censure. Just as the story with these persons who engaged in this cover-up, it will not end with them simply saying, this was not classified information. It will not. The story is still being unfolded, still being told. And in the end, posterity will judge us all. Posterity will see and know the truth. Time tells, history judges, the truth is known. The truth will be known. At some point, someone is going to reveal even more information about what happened on that chat. It will happen, maybe not now, maybe not this year, but at some point in time, the story is going to be told. And all of them will have to face a shaming that they have tried to avoid by contending that classified information was not such. You cannot get away with this kind of thing. The arc of the moral universe bends toward justice, and what you've done is unjust, and it will be told. The story will be told truthfully. And I close with this. We who are given the honor of serving, we have been accorded the trust of the public. It is said that we hold public trust. And when we hold public trust and we make mistakes, believe it or not, you can say you made a mistake. Or you can say, I didn't make a mistake, I did this intentionally, and going to suffer consequences. I'm prepared. I may not agree with them, but I'm prepared. We hold public trust. Those persons who participated in this cover-up are not persons worthy of holding public trust. So, Mr. Secretary of Defense, you, sir, should not hold public trust. You are not the person to determine whether something is classified or not. You have demonstrated wittingly or unwittingly that you're not capable of doing it. You just don't have what it takes within to speak the truth when you have committed a transgression. You shouldn't hold public trust. Sir, you should do the honorable thing. You should resign. And if you don't resign, the people of this country, notwithstanding all that the president has in terms of his power, notwithstanding all of this power, the people of this country, we the people, will have the last word. And you're going to see protests. You're going to see more protests because we the people refuse to allow cover-ups to go unnoticed. You're going to see more protests. But I say to everybody, make it a peaceful protest. Do not protest in any way other than with peace in your mind and your head and your heart. Peaceful protest. Peaceful protest can make a difference. It made a difference for the farmers when they came here with tractorcade and protested their farmlands being foreclosed on. Made a difference when the military veterans came to Washington, D.C. to protest the bonuses that they were promised. Made a difference when Dr. King came here and stood on the mall and read his I Have a Dream. Actually, he didn't read it. He actually stated it, his I Have a Dream speech, when he gave that I Have a Dream message. It makes a difference. Peaceful protest makes a difference. It is as American as the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock. Peaceful protest will continue. I will be a part of it. And if I should get in the way, as John Lewis says it, I will be prepared to suffer the consequences, but I refuse to give up my right to protest. And we, the people, will have the last word. I yield back the balance of my time.